Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar, brought to you by TechStrong. My name is Cody J. Brown, and I will be moderating today's session. We have an exciting presentation ahead of us today, but before we begin, I have just a few housekeeping notes. Today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the discussion, it will be made available to rewatch. You will receive an email after the webinar concludes with a link to access the on-demand. We also want to hear from you throughout today's program, so please feel free to send in your questions at any time using the Q&A tab. We will try to address as many questions as we can, so please send those questions in early. We also encourage discussion by using the chat tab. Let us know your thoughts, your comments, suggestions, or just say a quick hello. And finally, at the end of today's webinar, we will have a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. Stick around to see if you are one of our 4 lucky winners. But let's go ahead and kick off our webinar today. Our topic at hand is data from all directions, tying it all together to deliver apps the way you want. And I'm joined today by Gundar Daughter, HCL Volt MX Director. And at this time, I'm pleased to let Gundar take over. So thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you, Cody. Appreciate it. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar presented by HCL Volt MX. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Gundar Daughter, and I'm the Regional Director for Volt MX. I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia, here in the United States. In today's age of digital transformation, businesses everywhere are making mobile innovation and multi-channel experiences top priorities. And most have already implemented some form of a mobile strategy to engage with their customers, their partners, and employees. Now, some organizations who are ahead of the game have been using emerging technologies like blockchain or augmented reality in their apps. And now this webinar is going to dive into how you can implement such technologies in your applications, but more importantly, how to harness all of that data coming in to help your business derive value. The drastic increase in digitization over the last decade has naturally increased the opportunities to drive business value using technology with this increased quantity of data that goes beyond just basic inputs and outputs. When you think of your apps, there's the raw business data that the applications use, but there's also the aspect of transferring this data, and then you have to automate the transfer of this data. Now, for those thinking of adding these technologies and these emerging features to your apps, there's now additional sources of data to work with. You've got geolocation data. You've got augmented reality with image processing and image recognition. You've got robotic process automation with workflows and APIs. There's the world of IoT sensors and serial devices coming into the data streams. And then also near field communication is another means of accessing data from a mobile device. And then there's increasingly new sources of data in the backend being accessed every day. You've got the rise of blockchain technology, for example, that now enables processes beyond the financial world into other industries like healthcare. In addition, we now have access to not only data that the business uses, but also data that the business accesses, develops with, and then also processes. As you can see, this is a lot of data we could be dealing with. Now let's take a quick sample poll. There's a poll tab here in the interface. And just to see what kind of technology everyone else is interested in utilizing in your apps over the course of the next year. You just take a few minutes. We'll leave that up while I'm speaking here, so you don't have to answer right away. Now, these volumes of data that are starting to flood our architectures all need a way of integrating into a single platform that isn't tied to any of these particular technologies that somehow limits access to these sources and systems. All of the data can and should be used. It should be consumed, it should be processed, and it should be utilized in these apps in order to help our customers build their solutions for today as well as in the future. Now, this platform needs to provide a foundation to take these various sources of data, regardless of their format, and not be restricted in how they are understood so that we can provide a solution to, say, for example, a logistics company that might need to leverage the location and tracking technology provided by wearable devices or asset tracking devices like RFID tags. Similarly, for supply chain management applications for a warehouse, Bluetooth beacons can be brought in for fine-grained location activity and location tracking, and then be complemented by asset tracking devices like barcodes or RFID tags as additional sources of data. And with the rise of automation, processes to initiate a preventive maintenance work order automatically on demand based upon the data that is being monitored, for example, can be driven from IoT sensors or even robots when it's geographically or physically impossible to actually interact. Now, resolution of these may require remote access, and in many cases, there are even safety or political factors that could prevent direct physical interaction, and thus require technology to handle the data for that monitoring, for that auditing, and for that problem resolution. Now let's go back to our poll real quick and the results to see where folks are focusing their current technology needs. All right, these are interesting. I see some folks out there looking at AI, machine learning, geolocation, IoT, as well as AI. Okay, so it seems to be across the board. We appreciate your input. These are very interesting to read. But I think all of these examples really illustrate how that data is really being harnessed to create that value. I mean, now that value is not only for a specific use case, but as we can see here, it affects all parts of a business, all parts of our customers' organizations as well. Employees, for example, can now look to be more empowered. Now, since the pandemic started, most folks have been working from home. And then working from home with that new required technology as part of that remote enablement has now become the norm. It's now to the point where it's simply unacceptable to not have these types of solutions available to our employee talent. We need not only to retain, but also we need to attract new employee talent as well. And now with the way they work, how they work, as well as where they work, that variable is much, much bigger than it was before. Operations can be optimized for supply chain and manufacturing processes, for example, using geolocation via GPS or Bluetooth, including RFID or barcoding, as well as IoT systems. All of these are important data channels and provide data insights that need to be accessed to help drive innovation and to help streamline those processes to enable the business to transform and improve their existing operations. In a field service environment, where not only employees work remotely, but also where the data resides remotely, both still need to be connected on a regular basis. Using technology like mixed reality or augmented reality can help transform the processes around those services. They can help to improve that user experience for not only the employees, but also customers. Now, this data will ultimately have a ripple effect coming back into the manufacturing processes to help transform those actual products as a result of these new data streams of information. And then finally, engaging with customers in a way never done before, and how important it is now to offer those high levels of customer service and experience, perhaps using AI, is another way that we'll be streaming additional data information into those back-end systems. And I'll be sharing an example of that moving forward. Now, let's look at some customer examples of some of the challenges and opportunities to derive value based upon these new data sources and systems. Our first example, we take a logistics and delivery company. They have had to, during the pandemic, all of a sudden take in, manage, and process an increase in the volumes of data they are processing. You have shipment data, location data, tracking data, customer data. All of these have increased significantly. Where folks are now working more mobile and remotely, the amount of data transactions increase. Just think for a moment. Instead of processing packages to and from a central corporate office address, these are now being routed to 50 different addresses to manage for a single customer. 50 different people, 50 different contact points. The quantity of information increases: phone numbers, addresses, email addresses, tax calculations, shipment rates, shipment payments, and all of the other accompanying data also increases proportionally. The complexity of accurately tracking the packages in order to prevent potential loss in revenue due to delays, incorrect or obsolete data, and especially the accuracy of the physical location of delivery during that last status update are all increasingly critical to track and manage. And beyond just textual-based data, photographs are now being used as well to track in conjunction with location and timestamp information to verify that that delivery was made to the correct location. Now you're dealing with significant quantities of binary data in addition to the text data that now have to be processed as part of that delivery transaction, in addition to all those other things we talked about earlier. And then beyond just the logistical process of physically moving the packages, customer satisfaction and customer support become also more critical to retain and improve with these added requirements. Customers are part of that data loop, and the logistics company has a need to make sure that that information was available to its customers in order to make sure that they retain, but also improve that customer relationship. Another very relevant example is around the COVID virus. How does a government agency securely and accurately capture information about receipt of the vaccine, but still also provide a convenient, but more importantly, secure way to prove the vaccine has been administered in order to facilitate people moving around? There is a need to securely create and track these transactions using secure technologies like blockchain to manage this highly personalized data. But it also needs to be made accessible two-way to individuals as part of that communication process. The solution has to be device agnostic, given the wide variety of devices in the marketplace. The solution also needs to be deployed quickly as more and more folks are receiving the vaccine, all the while retaining security in order to accurately communicate between nation states that will need to verify this information without violating privacy laws and protocols. Retailers have a need to attract and, more importantly, retain customers through loyalty programs and customer service. In this case, a retailer had a need to do exactly this to reinforce that sticky factor, to continue to have those customers come back in an effort to help improve their bottom line. How do you help solidify that customer relationship using the latest technology and still be able to support their organization with the increased data volume as a result of these increased remote interactions? Folks have not been able to just go to a store location, so they are now looking for more ways to interact remotely through apps and the web. How do you make that customer feel as if they're being catered to as an individual by delivering a more personalized experience, but without them leaving and feeling isolated? They're interested in trying to take advantage of new technology like natural language processing as a way to help do just that. So given these requirements, what does that do to the architecture of the business app development? Here are the 6 common layers of architecture for an app development environment. It can involve multiple logos, as we can see here. Now, depending upon whether it's security or analytics or handling the data integration endpoints, or at the other end, you have new customer touch points, you have new clients, new operating systems, new versions of those operating systems, and new means of accessing that data that are coming along each day, whether it's IoT sensors or wearable devices. Plus, you have all the various expertise and skill sets that are needed to develop, deliver, and support these various app environments in this ever-changing landscape. Now, what's needed is really a platform and a new level of expertise that understands both ends of the spectrum to help provide this as a single solution that's both scalable as well as extensible to meet the business needs. So what do you do when you look for an app solution that simplifies your development architecture? Well, we recommend a single platform that can tie different data streams together, make it easy to integrate, and is agnostic to data forms and operating systems. Now, of course, speaking of picking the right solution, I am here today to talk about how VoltMX and how it can solve these data challenges. So we'll get into it. Using Volt Foundry, the middleware component of the VoltMX platform, we have a very unique and simple and easy way to consume and integrate to these various systems of record, these systems of data, their respective APIs, which are oftentimes accessed in different ways programmatically, and then being able to take and make this data available to be used by a variety of platforms and not be tied down to the methods of access for these different systems. How those data streams are exposed and made available becomes an act of configuration instead of heavy coding activity. Using VoltMX, establishing how data is structured, how it's defined, how it's accessed, all the while using the existing IT security investment, are all activities that would have to be done regardless of the approach. But now using VoltMX, instead of doing it through code, we make it available through configuration and administrative functions to provide those data endpoints for developers to use. Developers can then use their native SDKs, they can use web SDKs, or they can utilize the features of Volt Iris and Volt Flare to increase the overall speed of consumption and use of these new technologies in order to increase the overall development speed to help produce those applications to take advantage of them, to ultimately reduce the number of support resources and overhead needed to sustain these solutions once they're deployed into production. So having that platform support for all of these various functions as part of app development, it helps reduce that complex stack of logos to a much more simplified view of how VoltMX and our architecture enables you to do just that. How VoltMX reduces that architecture complexity so that the stack, all of those logos, are all integrated into a single solution and made more easily accessible. The sensors, the APIs, the client SDKs, all can then be accessed, that data via the Volt Flare engine to serve as the common interface and deliver that data and make it immediately available to any front-end application. Now, this applies not only to existing applications within the existing infrastructure, but it also applies to future development activities by providing a framework and an architecture that can more easily adapt to these new technologies as they emerge. So where does this bring us with our regard to our customer stories we mentioned earlier? Well, our logistics company realized the value of taking all that geolocation data combined with the timestamps, the pictures, that binary data, and rapid integration of these various pieces of info, and being not only able to process it all via one central avenue, but also scale to meet the increased demand from working remotely. It allowed them to provide real-time updates of the geolocation information, handling the greater quantities of binary data provided by the pictures, and then having a rapid integrated communication mechanism via email and SMS to be able to update to their customers with more accurate information and proof of delivery. Now, their loss prevention department was enabled by reducing the amount of lost package reports based upon the additional data points that they were able to capture. All of these improvements have reduced their support calls significantly. This has also led to a rise in their customer satisfaction rates, which led to an ultimate rise in their Net Promoter Score to help demonstrate the value of this investment in new technology. Our local government has been able to deliver an app using blockchain technology to safely and securely record and report on the status of vaccine administration, helping to ensure its users have the necessary information to individually and securely show their medical information when needed to facilitate movement. The system was adopted quickly due to the rapid development features of the platform, and they're able to report on the usage and adoption to determine the increased value provided by the solution. This application project can also be reused in other areas where a similar blockchain-enabled process needs to be followed, thus saving on future investment in similar solutions. Our third customer was able to implement a customer service chatbot utilizing natural language processing and AI in order to help deliver that personalized customer experience. Having the additional communication channel opened up a new avenue to get to search results, but also to help target those results to a more accurate data set for the customer based upon their search history and loyalty account preferences. The data gathered from the searches helped them figure out from a marketing standpoint what products are most popular, leading to better tailored offers and promotions. This had an immediate effect in increasing the amount of sales and transactions they saw through their website, as well as through their mobile app. Their support calls were reduced, saving them money, and they saw an increase in their App Store ratings. So in closing, how does VoltMX help to derive value and reduce cost? Well, we can summarize it into really three primary areas. First off is customer engagement. It's important to provide an easier means to access more data in the environment. Those different types of data, whether it's geolocation info or binary data from pictures, whether it's email, push notifications, or even now the tenfold amount of data due to the remote nature of work these days, the solution can make this data available to customers, but then also scale to the needs of the business to improve operational efficiency and ultimately the bottom line. Or in the case of personalized experiences, being able to utilize customer-specific or user-specific information to tailor that experience for the end user to help improve that stickiness factor, to keep those eyeballs on the glass, as we like to say. Taking advantage of data points like search queries, using geolocation, personal preference information, artificial intelligence-driven decision-making, all help contribute to keep the customer not only engaged now, but coming back to be engaged in the future. By using secure blockchain technology to protect and communicate sensitive individual information, it helps provide that peace of mind, but also extend their technology stack to drive value in leveraging existing IT investment for their customers. And then finally, innovation. VoltMX does not restrict you from using the latest technology out there. Whether it's AI, augmented reality, blockchain, there's no waiting 8 or 9 months to support the latest version of the operating system for these features. If you see a new feature you want to use, a framework that contributes to innovating and focusing on improving that user experience, and instead of placing your development team within a rigid box, VoltMX helps you to focus on making sure your end users are best served via Volt Foundry and Volt Flare to ultimately help derive that value for your business in increased sales, improved customer service, and increased company growth. This is not only with today's current technology, but it's also ready for your future development needs. And so with that, let's get a conversation started to find out how VoltMX can help you leverage new technologies and to help you derive more value out of your IT investment. You can contact us for a demo or a free trial using the links you see on your screen here, or you can simply scan the QR code that you see with your phone to be able to get that set up. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to the Q&A section. So I'm just going to go through the list of questions here. I see a couple coming in. Does VoltMX have its own AI engine, or how does VoltMX support implementation of AI? We have a product here at HCL that is AI, but it's not built into the VoltMX platform. It exists as it's a separate on standalone product. We also do leverage third-party services as well, and typically we'll go through their API layer. For example, using a chatbot using Google's Dialogflow services. We'll talk through the Dialogflow services and their API layer, and then the Volt Iris IDE can help you develop that front-end user experience however you wish. And then Volt Foundry will make those services available to any application you want, whether it's a web PWA or whether that's a native device or a wearable device. The next question, you mentioned using geolocation for logistic delivery in one of your examples. But do you have examples of how one might use it for consumer-facing apps? Now, a common use case would be for address entry. So you'll see oftentimes you'll get prompted for an application to ask your permission to get your location. And so what it'll come down to is either as part of, say, an order entry, you don't have to necessarily type in your street name or do a zip code lookup, which can save on typos, which ends up just adding delays if the data ends up getting entered incorrectly. You could use it for any sort of situation where you need to enter an address or report coordinates, say like in a utility self-service use case where there's a local outage in your area and you need to tell the electric company where it is. Well, having that geolocation data can help provide a more precise piece of information so that they're not sending the repair crews out to the incorrect location. Next question. Any examples of how your customers are using IoT in these apps? Yeah, actually, we've got an interesting one. It's a pest control company, and they deploy rodent traps at business locations around for their customers. And these rodent traps are about the size of a shoebox, but they're all IoT connected. So these rodent traps, when they capture a critter, there's a sensor that's connected to their services layer that will initiate a work order automatically, which goes through the VoltMX platform to then be deployed to the technician's device automatically. So that IoT sensor fires off the workflow that creates the work order, schedules that work order based on resource availability, and then will automatically dispatch a push notification to the technician as well as the work order data, so that the work order data just shows up on the person's device. They know exactly where they're going for their next service appointment, and there's no need to make multiple calls to the call center. There's no need for the customer to call in and report that they have a trap that needs servicing. And so it's a very, very convenient means of automating a lot of information. I think it's a good example of how you can have multiple data streams going through the platform at once, coming through sensors as well as dealing with mobile devices and push notifications. Any other questions?
So I'm not seeing any more questions in the queue at the moment.
Okay.
So everyone, please feel free to send in your questions. Well, it seems like we do have a quiet bunch. All right, well, seeing as how we have exhausted our questions today, if there are any more questions that you would like to send in, we can make sure we get those over to the folks that they need to get to. Also, a quick reminder that today's session was recorded, so if you missed any or all of the presentation, or you just like to rewatch, it will be made available. Following the webinar, you'll receive an email with a link to access the recording on demand, and you can also find it living on the DevOps website. Just visit devops.com/webinars and look in the on-demand section, and it will be waiting for you. We're going to go ahead and announce our 4 winners of the $25 gift card drawing. Our first winner is Tiffany D. So congratulations to Tiffany D. Molly P. Our second winner is Molly P. Our third winner is Ed R. Ed R. And our fourth winner is Chinari S. Chinari S. So congratulations to the 4 of you. Please keep an eye on your inbox to claim your gift card. And if you don't receive an email, just check your spam folder. Gundar, thank you so much for taking the time to put this program together. Are there any closing remarks that you'd like to leave our audience with before we officially close out?
No, thank you, Cody, for having me today. I appreciate the time. I appreciate everyone's time. And just hopefully to look forward to hearing from you and see what we can do to help solve your business needs.
Great. Well, again, thank you so much for being here today. I'd also like to thank our audience for joining us for today's presentation. This is Cody J. Brown signing off. Have a great day, everybody.